The courtroom was silent, except for the shuffle of feet and the soft murmur of whispers. The once sturdy walls, filled with years of power and authority, now felt different. Outside, the city of Charleston hummed with life, but inside, something was changing. Judge Vanessa Cross had sat in this very seat for years, overseeing cases that came through the system. But this time, it wasn't just any case. This one was different. It had started with a simple question: what happens when justice is ignored? The people of Charleston had asked it for years, but now, the city's very future was on the line. Judge Cross had seen it all: corruption, silence, and stories buried under piles of paperwork. But today, everything was different. Today, the truth was about to come out. For months, the city had watched as the trial of Officer Kyle Morgan unfolded, shaking the foundations of everything the people believed. The officer, once trusted, now stood at the center of a storm. His actions had sparked a conversation that reached far beyond the courtroom, reaching every corner of Charleston. His crimes weren't just about one man's wrongdoings, they were a sign of something bigger, something that had been ignored for too long. Judge Cross had spent countless hours reviewing evidence, listening to testimonies, and following the twists of the case. But as the time for the verdict drew near, the weight of the decision grew heavier. Would justice finally be served? Or would the system remain broken? One thing was clear: the city was watching, and the world was listening. Judge Vanessa Cross wasn't just another person in a black robe. She had earned her place in the courtroom, not by playing by the rules, but by breaking the ones that held people back. She had grown up in Charleston, a city that had taught her the harsh lessons of justice. Her childhood had been tough. Her father, a police officer, had always told her that if you wanted to see change, you had to fight for it. But her early life had shown her that fighting wasn't always enough. When Vanessa became a lawyer, she quickly saw how easy it was for people to hide the truth. She had seen cases swept under the rug and stories ignored just to keep things peaceful. It frustrated her. The system wasn't broken, it was built this way. The higher-ups controlled what was seen and heard, and that made her determined to make a difference. She fought her way through law school, then became a prosecutor before finally becoming a judge. But becoming a judge didn't stop the pain of the past from haunting her. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was supposed to do more, not just pass judgments, but bring real change. Her reputation for being tough and unflinching in her pursuit of justice had earned her both respect and fear. Yet, even with all the cases she had overseen, none were as important as this one. Officer Kyle Morgan's trial was personal for Vanessa. It wasn't just about right or wrong, it was about showing Charleston and the world that things could be different. The way the people had been treated, the silence they had lived under, needed to end. Vanessa wasn't going to let this case be buried like the others. This time, justice would be different. Everything seemed to shift the day Officer Kyle Morgan was arrested. At first, people thought it was just another typical case, yet this one was far from normal. The accusations against Morgan were serious. He wasn't just any officer, he had been one of the most trusted, the one who could do no wrong. But there were witnesses who saw him abuse his power in a way that shocked even the most hardened residents of Charleston. They had seen it, and now they were finally speaking up. The community was split right down the middle. Some wanted Morgan's head on a platter, believing that for too long, the system had protected bad cops like him. Others were quick to defend him, claiming it was just a misunderstanding or, worse, an attack on all officers. In the middle of all this chaos was Judge Vanessa Cross, the woman who was about to hold the key to what would happen next. At first, she didn't know what to expect. The case wasn't just another trial, it was going to be a battle for the city's soul. Vanessa had dealt with many difficult cases before, but this felt different. This wasn't just about one bad cop, it was about whether Charleston would continue to let corruption slide or finally take a stand. The pressure was enormous. Some of the most powerful people in Charleston wanted the case to be buried. They didn't want anyone digging up the past, especially not the secrets that had been kept hidden for so long. But Vanessa couldn't let that happen. She couldn't let the truth be swept under the rug again. As the trial date approached, it became clear this was going to be a fight like no other, and Vanessa was going to have to choose between protecting the system or tearing it down for the truth. Just when everyone thought the case had reached its peak, something completely unexpected happened. During a tense day in court, Judge Vanessa Cross was handed a sealed envelope. It was delivered by a quiet man in a gray suit who walked in and left without saying a word. Everyone in the courtroom watched closely as Vanessa opened it. Her face changed the moment she read the first line. Something big was inside that envelope. She paused the court session and stepped into her chambers. After a few minutes she returned, her voice calm but firm. "This trial is no longer just about Officer Morgan," she said. "New evidence has come forward." People in the courtroom leaned in, whispering to each other. Even the lawyers looked confused. No one had expected this. Vanessa held up a document that shocked everyone. It wasn't just Morgan who had been doing wrong. The paper showed proof that a group of high-ranking officers and city officials had been covering up crimes for years. The corruption ran deep, much deeper than anyone knew. And worse, they had been working together to silence people who tried to tell the truth. The room exploded with gasps and chatter. Reporters scrambled to write down every word. Some people cried. Others were furious. The city's trust had been broken. Morgan wasn't just a bad cop, he was part of a secret network of people abusing their power. This wasn't just a case anymore. It was a full-blown scandal. One of the most powerful names on that document: Police Chief Raymond Beck. He had spoken proudly in the news about justice and fairness, but behind the scenes, he was helping hide crimes. People were stunned. If the chief was involved, who else was part of this? Vanessa didn't wait. She ordered the court to call for federal investigators. This was too big for just one courtroom. The system people believed in had failed, and it needed to be fixed from the ground up. As the courtroom emptied that day, there was a heavy silence in the air. Everyone knew things would never be the same. What started as one man's trial had uncovered a city's darkest secrets. Judge Cross stood tall, knowing the hardest part was still ahead, but also that the truth was finally starting to rise to the surface. Weeks after the courtroom explosion, things began to change fast. News about the secret network spread across the country. People marched in the streets, holding signs, demanding justice not just for what happened in that courtroom, but for all the pain that had been hidden for years. The city was no longer quiet. It was awake, angry, and ready to make things right. Police Chief Raymond Beck was arrested by federal agents just 3 days after the trial. Along with him, 6 more high-ranking officials were taken into custody. Their fancy titles couldn't protect them anymore. The law was finally catching up. Judge Vanessa Cross stayed on the case. She worked day and night, going through every file, every name, making sure no one was left out. She became a hero to many, a symbol of courage and truth. Kids started learning about her in schools. People painted murals of her face. She had stood up when others stayed silent. Officer Morgan, the man who started it all, was sentenced to 25 years in prison. His smirk was gone. He didn't look powerful anymore. Just small and scared. Justice had finally arrived. But the real change wasn't just in courtrooms or prisons. It was in the hearts of the people. More officers stepped forward to tell the truth. New leaders were voted in. Laws were changed. And trust slowly started to grow back. The city still had a long road ahead, but now it had something: it had lost hope. What began as one woman being harassed in her own neighborhood turned into a movement that shook the entire system. The people had found their voice, and this time, they weren't going to be quiet again. Months later, things in the city looked different. Streets once filled with silence now had voices, music, and children laughing. People were no longer afraid to speak up. They had seen what happened when one woman stood tall, and it made them believe they could too. Celeste James, who had once been wrongly stopped in her own neighborhood, now stood on the steps of City Hall. Reporters surrounded her, cameras flashed, and people cheered her name. But she didn't smile for fame. She smiled because she knew something had changed not just in the system, but in the people. Her silence had once been her protection, but now her truth was her power. She didn't return to her old job in the FBI. Instead, she created an organization that helped train young people in law, justice, and leadership. Her goal wasn't just to fight bad cops. It was to raise up better ones. Stronger ones. Ones who understood what justice really meant. The city's story became a lesson for the world. News stations, podcasts, and schools everywhere talked about it. People learned that silence helps the wrong people win, but truth spoken loud and clear can bring real change. Even after everything, Celeste stayed humble. She still walked her dog in the same park, still waved at her neighbors, still helped old ladies cross the street. But to everyone else, she was something more now. A reminder that one person can make a difference, even when the odds are high. In the end, it wasn't just about stopping one racist cop. It was about waking up a whole city, shaking a broken system, and proving that even in the darkest moments, justice can shine through when brave people refuse to back down.